Hi, I'm Angel Mason, the Director of Athletics at Berry College, and I welcome you to the One Question Leadership Podcast. Leadership for me is about growing yourself and investing in others. My purpose is to help you be the best version of yourself, and that starts with a person in the mirror. The NCAA leadership development programs that helped me focus my philosophy were my participation in the Dr. Charles Whitcomb Leadership Institute and the Pathway Program. Be great and bring your authentic self to every room. Enjoy this episode.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. We are joined today by two people. Our first guest is Andrew Gavin. Andrew is the Director of Athletics at University of Wisconsin-Parkside. Greetings, Andrew. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ty.
We also have Chris Barker. Chris is the Director of Athletics at Southern Connecticut State. Greetings, Chris. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ty.
Now, Chris, you've been on for a year, right?
Yep.
Andrew, now you've been there for 4 years. How long have you been there?
5 years.
5 years, right? So veteran experience. But the unique part of this conversation is that, Chris, at some point you worked for Andrew, right?
I did.
Working your way up to Deputy Athletics Director before leaving to become the Athletic Director of Southern Connecticut
That is
State.
correct.
Yeah.
He put up with me for a couple years.
Couple years, right?
Couple years.
Andrew, if you'll tell me a little bit about what you saw in him, because from what I understand, he was promoted a couple times in a short time span to become your deputy. So what did you see in Chris in terms of leadership, in terms of helping the department to be successful?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, somebody that wanted to do the work every day, that was passionate about being a leader in college athletics. And whether that was part of the job description or not, Chris was somebody on our team that was constantly asking how he could help. He's very solutions driven, which is something that I appreciate and that I respect. We're a pretty optimistic, positive athletic department, but to have him to drive solutions and to take things off my plate. Not everybody enjoys being a number two. And Chris is a phenomenal number one now, but he was an incredible number two, just his mindset around that. And he had done that for a legend. We can't have this conversation without talking about the late Doc Bob Bond, who's an ACTA Hall of Famer. So Chris had worked for Doc Bond, someone who knew what he was doing as an athletic director. And then he has to come work for me, someone who doesn't really know anything about what they're doing as a director of athletics. But because of his experiences with Doc, he was just phenomenal at being helpful. Right. So when you have somebody like that, you want to help them to grow in all sorts of ways. But I think from a title perspective, from more opportunities, he started internally, but phenomenal external brain and mindset. So as we tweaked his job description and titles, really reflecting the broad talent and experiences that we were trying to provide and that Chris was trying to bring to our team.
Right, which is excellent. Now, Chris, in terms of working for him, you work for somebody who sees the talents in you, so you want to live up to the expectations that they put on you by seeing those talents, right? Tell me about being a quality staff member, doing the things necessary so that the boss can sleep at night without having to worry about things.
Yeah, I always took a lot of pride in that. And again, kudos to Dr. Robert Bond. Because he really instilled that, and making sure that the boss could do, whether it was just fundraising every day, whether it be talking to the VPs, cabinet, whatever you ever do. I took a lot of pride in that. Again, that goes back to my upbringing. But honestly, that mindset, if you're really good at what you do, right, the promotions will come in line. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I never went to Andrew and said, can you promote me to this and that? I always just wanted to be better, but I give a lot of credit to Andrew because he saw someone who wanted to work hard, and he was able to actually give me the tools and lead from my chair. You talk about the Pathway program talks about that. You want to be good, you want to be an AD, but you need to first learn how to lead from your chair. And I was given that in my last two jobs specifically, that opportunity. And for me, it was priceless. And I talk about going over from Carthage, which, again, working for a Hall of Fame AD, a NAD Lifetime Achievement Award winner, to go into work for Andrew. That was a hard decision, but I think for me it was easy because it was a real decision. I say that because my wife and I had been offered the job. We went and actually sat in Andrew's office, and he showed up with his then 3-month-old, son at the time, and now he's on like number 8. But at the time it was only his second child. My wife and I had just had our first one, and they're a week apart. Wyatt and Henry. So for us, it was like, this guy's real, I'm one of those people who trust your gut, and I've always done that in my career, and my parents, all my mentors have always told me that, and, I looked at my gut, and I just turned and looked at my wife, and I was like, yeah, we can do this.
This is where we need to
be.
Right,
and it was the right fit, and, whenever you show up to work and it's not work, It's not work, right?
Yeah.
It's fun, and you're getting better every day. So it made it real easy to work for Andrew, and honestly, he just really made me even better of a leader because I was able to really sharpen my tools.
Right, which is excellent. You mentioned there the NCAA pathway program, right?
Yep.
Of course, Andrew, you went through it first and then recommended him for it. Tell me a little bit about how that, and I think we might have talked about just a bit before, but how that influenced and impacted your leadership style, your understanding of the greater role that athletics plays on a college campus, and really just organizational and executive leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can't say enough good things about the Pathway program. I actually did it a little bit backwards because the very first day of the Pathway program, I interviewed it at Parkside.
Oh, wow.
And then got the job a week or so later. And so for my year in the Pathway program, I was actually in the chair, which isn't the intent, but it was incredibly valuable to have. Obviously, my cohort, the friends that when we're at NACTA now, like that's who we are drawn to. That's who we want to go to dinner with. That's who we want to go to lunch with. But obviously Dee and Lamar and all the different resources and mentors that they try to bring in educationally. It allows you to think about the work in a different way. They challenge you through the Pathway program. I think that's really important. It's not a place you go to get patted on the back and told how great you are. It's a place you go to be challenged and educated. And that's ultimately what's going to help us all become better leaders, is that none of us are finished products. And I certainly wasn't at 33 stepping into the chair. So, and then the other thing is, I think, Chris getting involved in it and other members of our team getting involved nationally and regionally in organizations like the NCAA Leadership Development or through the NACTA and all the umbrellas there, you understand the value for them as young professionals, but it's also really valuable for us. Now when we come to these things, and now when Chris comes as an AD and we're trying to fill a position, hopefully we've built up some reputation that this is a great place to go and be a professional and grow as a leader and be cheerleaded on and promoted and ultimately be celebrated when you leave.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a bunch of people on our team that are 10, 15, 20-year veterans. I want people like Chris that want to get in the Pathway program and want to do great work and then go do great work somewhere else.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because you promoted them over a couple of years and then got to help them get into the program. And you think about it like, I am setting this person, well, he may have gotten there without me, right, in terms of where he is now, in terms of being in the chair, but I'm also helping to set this person up for success so they can get out of my department, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's an interesting dilemma as a
Right, yeah.
leader, right? Like none of our coaches were happy when Chris got the AD job because that's how good he was,
Yeah.
right? And it was bittersweet, and there were tears and all sorts of other things, but that's what you want ultimately. That's what being on a college campus. If we're gonna want our students to grow, our student athletes to grow for their 4 or 5 years, we better have the same approach to our staffs. Otherwise, we're not doing it right.
Not doing it right. Tell me about.
And I think, Ty, I think it's, iron truly does sharpen iron. You talk about the way Andrew's led and the way I've led. It's part of the Pathway program. You talk about, you got my name from Charles Guthrie. Well, he's a fellows program, which is the Pathway program, right? So it's all these people, the Peter Robies of the world, who really do. They see talent and they see people who are motivated, but they give them that platform, the opportunity to be successful. And I think when you talk about leadership, good leaders, they're not afraid to hire talent, but 2, they're not afraid to help talent develop, right? And I think if the Pathway program, I hate for it to be a pitch for it, but it should be, because it really is a great leadership development, does a great job doing that for all people, right? Doesn't matter where they're from or their background. So, if there's anything to take away from this, it's get involved, at the NCAA level, because there's so many people, and the best strength of the Pathway program is the alum. Right. Andrew and I both are going back on our phones, meeting with people at NACTA who are in that program, who were in that program, and to be an advocate for that program, to be able to give back to that program is such a blessing. It's something that I truly enjoy doing when I get that opportunity.
Yeah. When he approached you with it, I imagine you had heard about it before, right? Because he'd been through it. Tell me about what you expected from it, and then how it may have exceeded your expectations in terms of going through the actual program.
And I went through it, during COVID. We started without COVID, and then it hit, obviously. In terms of, you don't know what you don't know, and that program is so powerful. After that first week, at least for me, I think a lot of people in my cohort, Anna will tell you, his was a little different because he already had been an AD. But if you had never been AD, it's like, cut it out, right? This is serious. You really want to be in the chair. And it was really no one's going to be, you're not going to be cute with it. They're going to help you with your interview skills. They're going to prep you, but really prepare you for that final stage of, you're in front of a VP, right? And it's just like sports as a student athlete, right? Every day, you're showing up and you're competing for this opportunity. Well, I think coming to be an AD and wanting to be an AD, you have to have that mindset where, hey, if I really want to be this person, I got to be just like him. Actually, I got to be better than him or her, right? So it's having that mindset of being better than any person across the table when you're interviewing, but also making sure that you're mature and ready for anything to happen, because anything and everything will happen.
Oh, really?
You know, if the 2.5 years haven't showed us that with the pandemic, and just with everything with mental health and just the society and the nature of NIL and college athletics, I think we'd all be going, what's going on, right? So it's just being equipped with that and being able to make sure that you, one, have the network to support you, and then two, aren't afraid of those challenges and actually embrace those challenges and create solutions.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question, right? Don't know if you guys can answer it, but you guys seem to be great friends in terms of you work together. You guys want to see each other succeed, but even in a work relationship, there have had to be some tough conversations, right? So tell me how tough conversations work amongst good friends, right?
I'll go first, Andrew, because again, I talk about it doesn't feel like work. Andrew and I've been fortunate. I've had two really special bosses and mentors, which is odd because one was 60 in his 60s and the other one was only a few years older than me, you know, so they became peers more than anything. They became friends and people that I talk to on a regular basis. And, you know, when I have people in my life, I'm really consistent about it, and I like to have that routine, you know, so I would talk to Dr. Bond, I would talk to Andrew, and I just go through my Rolodex, you know, Charles Guthrie, Sean Frey. I try and get through these people and stay in touch with them because it's important to me, right? And I want to make sure, one, that I'm doing the right things for the people that I'm serving, right? But two, it's relational, right? They're going to tell me things about their day that I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, so for when I was working with Andrew, it's disgusting because my wife would be like, and I know his wife is like the same thing. Why are you talking to this guy? Right? Like you just saw this person for 8, sometimes 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
But even on those days, it's like you pick up the phone and it's like, we just saw each other and we're driving home. He's like, all right, well, I'm pulling in, you know, me too.
We better get off the phone before we walk in that
door.
door.
We know that, right?
Yeah.
That's our life balance and integration too. So really, I think there was never a surprise. You know, I talked about on the podcast with you, the thing I did with my boss is no surprises. Well, I know Andrew did that with his boss. And really, we had a relationship. I think a good number 2, make sure that there's no surprises for your boss, right? So I took a lot of pride in that, but it was never, I don't know that we've ever had a working one where it was like the sky's falling and, you know, we have to figure it out. But I think honestly,
if we did, normally we were teammates in that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think about, I know we've referenced him a lot, but like when Chris came over from Carthage to Parkside, Doc Bond came with him because he retired from Carthage.
Oh, really?
So he was in the office challenging the two of us as like the father figure. And really we're more like brothers. Like I'm the older brother who happened to get the job, be a few years older and get a job first. But you know, our kids, as he mentioned, our kids are the same age. You know, we played a lot of golf together. So it doesn't always work that way. But we really are best friends. And that's the way it worked for us in that moment. Not every relationship is going to be that. It's not, it always shouldn't be that. But stage of life, just kind of where we were, family, hobbies, all sorts of things. So the tough conversations weren't really part of that. I mean, I think the toughest things were, and one of the reasons that we promoted him, not because he would ask for it, is as a leader, I felt an obligation to Chris to not to make the decision for him, but to help make sure that when he decided to leave Parkside and become an AD somewhere, that he wasn't settling, right? And I think help it promote him, finding a few extra dollars, allowed Chris to say no. I mean, he got called by a search firm at least once a month for the last 18 months.
Wow.
And I don't think that's being dramatic. I think that's pretty much about what the average would be. So because we were trying to support him, because we had a great relationship, he was able to be a little bit more picky. And then know at the time when Southern called, this is the right fit. This is the right opportunity for me to go do this thing on my own, and not on our own, because we miss each other's call at least once a day.
Yeah.
We try to answer. Time zones, kids, work doesn't always work, but at least once a day for the last 365 days, we have at a minimum missed each other's call.
That's interesting because I wonder, Chris, you guys talk often. Let's think about the first 90 days as an athletics director, right? I mean, was he calling you 5 times a day? Like, look, you didn't tell me this was going to happen. So now how do I deal with this person? So tell me about that. What kind of questions you ask in that first?
You know, I mean, college athletics, I think we're not rewriting the wheel, right? The book, all that. I would call them and it would be similar things. The reason that I felt comfortable taking this job specifically at Southern, it was very similar. Regional public, right? Predominantly first generation serving institution. You know, Andrew and I both have enjoyed that and love that. And it was kind of who we are, right? There was a big part of that. So the jobs were very similar. I think the challenges that I faced, it was like, well, you can't make that up. You know, they were unique, and that's part of the fun part of college athletics. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be obstacles. So I didn't badger him with a call, but I made sure to tell him, you know, as a friend and as a mentor, and I would ask him, you know, like, hey, what would you do with this? You know, even if it was something as simple as like marketing and branding, you know, Andrew's got a lot of talents, but that honestly is one of his strengths, right? He does a really good job telling the story. And for me, you know, I would say I was probably more in my career the nuts and bolts, the solution side of it, you know, and running a shop, and I really enjoyed that. So for us to blend it, it's one, from a work standpoint, why we got along, but two, it's really helped us grow Parkside together. And it's really helped me be a director of athletics, and it's something I took for granted, the marketing and the branding. But I would just call him. Honestly, you know, it's like, how many times you call him? No, I call him, and I'd get an answer from him. Like, that's what I thought, you know? So it's always good to have that real honest truth. And he would tell me, he'd be like, no, that's stupid, Chris.
Really?
You know, if you're going to do that. But, well, you have to, right? That's what all relationships are being about.
Be honest feedback,
you know, being honest with each other, you know? So it helps to have that, too.
I think just one thought on that, too. I think having a relationship like we have now, you know, from across the country, at least for me, I don't want to speak for Chris, allows me to keep some stuff off my wife's brain.
Oh, really?
Like, I'm really intentional about not coming into the door and telling her, good or bad. I could come in and celebrate. We just got a big gift or a big partnership or this. Well, she may not have had a great day at work, or she may be, you know, we were about to have our fourth kid. Like, she may not want to hear about all the great stuff at work, or the reverse, right?
Yeah.
So I think some of those calls to and from the office allow us to either just digest a really tough day or celebrate a win. Like he'll call me and say, hey, I just had lunch with a donor. It was awesome. You know, it's not really a question. It's the opportunity to celebrate something that happened that day, or just unload for 10 minutes. So when we walk into the door at home, we can be present with our wives and with our families. And that's almost more of a value to me than a specific question or a specific challenge. It's just being able to do that with each other still from across the country is something I really appreciate. We've kind of retained that.
What is probably great about that, because you guys talked a lot back when he worked for you, is that now the conversations you're having are athletic director type. You know what I mean? Now you're like, yeah, so I just did this. And he's like, you know, if you'd have told me this a year and a half ago, I would have been happy. But now that you tell me, I'm like, yeah, I see the significance of that there, right? That's a big thing.
There's no doubt. And I think it really is. It's a testament to friendship, right? Professional development, but also mentoring others too. So we have a little bit of a unique relationship on that. There's no doubt. So
I'll ask one or two questions here, and then we'll wrap. Specifically about leadership. Andrew here talked about developing people so they can go off and become leaders, right? Joe Castiglione's thing is be a person that people want to follow, right? Be someone people want to follow, and which sounds like what you want to do. And then they go off and become people they want to follow in themselves. Tell me a little bit about that in your department, in terms of that you've been there for a year, and I'm sure you have identified people who look like they have something to them, and you want to nudge them in directions, whether it be some type of professional development or personal development or an NCAA leadership development program, and get them on the path to really live in their greatness. Tell me about that aspect of what you do there.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, again, as a first-time AD, you know, and again, someone who really was given those opportunities, it's important to me. So I've been intentional about presenting those opportunities, you know, for our staff. Again, I have an interesting dynamic because I am by far the youngest No, there's one person younger than me, right? And then in a coordinator position. But again, talking to those people, making sure that we're not stagnant, you know, it's probably more so because, again, Southern's a great place, and those people that are at work for me, honestly, aren't leaving that place, you know, knock on wood, right?
Yeah.
But they've proven that, and their time shows that there, and their service to the institution. So for me, it's just making sure our administrative specifically doesn't get stagnant, and making sure that those opportunities are at the forefront of their mind, because ultimately, again, as we get sharper, who does it affect and impact? Our students and our coaches. So it's something I try and bring up. I did it at the first 90 days. I interviewed everybody, right? I had them do a SWOT of their position, the institution, and the department. So taking that, and again, it was really fun to look back at that and see where I've gone. But, you know, it really is driven by people and making sure that they're going in the same direction.
Yeah, which is a wonderful thing. I wonder, this last question is for both of you guys. People coming up in a profession, right? Whether they're just starting out, they're senior associates, they're deputies, or even people who are athletic directors, even athletic directors who's been in a chair for a long time, right? You hope everybody's constantly learning how to be better. Words from advice from you guys in terms of the work dynamic, the relationships, but also what you've seen in a year that you would give advice, and then what you've seen over 5 years to people who want to be in a chair, who are currently in a chair, in terms of how to sustain success and sustain meaningful relationships with people in the industry? You start us off, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I think back on 5 years, and we've had a lot of great things and progress and celebrations, but I think we don't take ourselves too seriously. I think coming in, I mean, I've been pretty frank that I got this job before I was ready for it, before I wanted it even, to some respects. And I joined the Pathway program to get ready to be an AD, not to take a job the next week.
Exactly.
And that kind of forced a different level of humility. And just, I have a phrase that I love that's own your deficiencies. And when I was a little bit younger, my deficiencies would bother me and I worried about them. Like, I haven't coached. How am I going to be an AD? How am I going to lead coaches? I've never coached. Or I wasn't a great college student athlete. Like, how can I step into an AD chair and lead these great student athletes? And as I've gotten a little bit older, and then I think getting into the chair in some respects helped me before I was ready, because I just had to be honest with myself and look in the mirror and just say, this is who you are. You need to own your deficiencies and focus on what you can do well. And then bring in great people like Chris that complement, and it really is a team. That's what we're all about in athletics. And that's really what leading a department in athletics administration is trying to find great people to be on your team that can highlight their strengths and complement your weaknesses. So for young people, just don't celebrate your strengths. Don't get too caught up. It's not going to be perfect. Right? It's just not.
It's not going to be perfect. What about you, Chris? Excellent advice, Andrew.
It is great advice. And I think, Andrew does a good job of this, and, it's something that's been instilled in me. Be good at where you're at. Don't look too far ahead. You talk about being patient. It's something that I constantly challenge myself on and work on, and just living in this moment. And the rest really does take care of itself. And I'm a big believer in this, I think all of us in college athletics, I say all the time, are dream makers, right? It's our jobs to make students' dreams come true. But with that, you have to dream, believe, and create expectations. So for that, I know that Andrew was 33 when he got his AD job. I was 33. Well, that doesn't come without a couple things, right? Dreaming, right? Setting a goal, and then being intentional. So I think for all young professionals, think about that. At 23, I was a Division I baseball coach. I was a recruiting coordinator, right? So how do you make that jump in 10 years? Well, you have to be intentional and have a plan.
Right.
And then just be good at where you're at every day, and the rest will happen. So just live in the process. That's what I would say.
Make it happen at a high level. Well, gentlemen, this has been an excellent conversation. I appreciate both you guys joining me here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Thanks for having us, Ty.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. That was Chris Barker. He's the Director of Athletics at Southern Connecticut State, and Andrew Gavin, who is the Director of Athletics at University of Wisconsin-Parkside. And, of course, I am Ty Brown with the One Question Leadership Podcast. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.